From there, we look at the characteristics of an ideal team player. And these characteristics come from the fantastic book by Patrick Lencioni, The Ideal Team Player, which I highly recommend. If you've never read this, this is a must read for all upper cervical practice owners. And these three characteristics are humble, hungry, and smart. And so looking at these three characteristics to determine whether or not your team member has these is crucial. Ideal team players are humble. Humble is the most important of these characteristics. If they're humble, then the other two characteristics can be developed. But without humility, it's a much more difficult process to build a great team member. So what does it mean to be humble? The great quote by C.S. Lewis, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. This is somebody that's others oriented. They're focused on others. They're focused on how they can make others, lift them up. They want to see you succeed, doc. They want to see your patients win. They want them to get great results, right? These are people who are others focused. They lack excessive ego or concerns about status. They're quick to point to the contributions of others. They share credit. They emphasize team over self. These are people that you want within your practice. If they don't have humility, that is something that you have to be very aware of, and it may be time to move on from that person. They also need to be hungry. Hungry team members are always looking for more, right? They're looking for more things to do, more to learn, more responsibility to take on. They don't need to be pushed. They are self-motivated. They're excited. They care about the practice. They care about the patients. They care about doing a great job. They're excellent at what they do, and they want to get better. This is what you want. You want that type of a team player within your team. They also are smart, meaning not just intelligent, but people smart. They have the ability to, talk to people and understand people and understand what's going on with them and understand, they have that self-awareness. They have social awareness. They can understand relationships. They tend to understand groups and how to work within groups and the group dynamics and those types of things and how their words impact others. This is a huge characteristic of an ideal team player as well. So you want to have these three characteristics within each of your team members. And if you don't have all three of these characteristics, you have to identify that as a practice owner and try to train them and help them to grow in these areas, or realize that you don't have the right team members. And so if they only have one of these characteristics, right? These are, for instance, if they are only humble or they're only hungry or they're only people smart, in the book, The Ideal Team Player, he gives them some different names, right? The pawns are humble but not hungry or people smart. Bulldozers are hungry but not humble or people smart. Charmers are people smart but not humble or hungry, right? If someone just has one of the characteristics, it's going to be difficult. You're really going to need to train them a lot, but they could grow into somebody who is firing on all cylinders. But it's to be seen whether or not that will be the case. If they have two of the characteristics, this is a difficult situation because you get people in these situations and some of them will never develop that third characteristic. They may never become an ideal team player if that negative characteristic is too strong to overcome. For instance, if you've trained with a team member for months or maybe even years, and they're still in these categories I'm going to talk about next, it's time to move on, doc. Usually we wait too long to let a team member go who is not an ideal team player, right? And when we let them go, we look back at it, we realize we should have done that a year ago or 6 months ago or whatever it may be. And so there's these ones that have 2 out of the 3 characteristics or these virtues. One is the accidental mess maker. This is a person that is humble and hungry, but they lack people smarts. This is probably the one that's the easiest to work with to help them develop more people skills, right? They're the elephants in the china shop. They mean well. They don't want any credit, but they lack the people skills to communicate it effectively with other team members. Sometimes they can offend patience, right? Their words and actions can often lead to frustration with other team members. They can contribute and are respected, but they may not have that people skills that they need in order to be successful in the position that they're in. Now, you might be able to find a position within the team that works well for them, something that is less client facing, less patient facing. That may be possible, but depending on the practice, it may not be. And so, looking at these kinds of people to see if they're a good fit long term is important. What about the skillful politician? This is someone that it can be very dangerous within a team. They're good at manipulating people and achieve their own objectives, right? So they are people smart. They're good talkers. They know how to interact with people, and they're hardworking, meaning they're hungry. But they bask in the glory of what they've accomplished. They're arrogant very frequently. They lack humility. And skillful politicians, they need to be identified. They need to be called out and corrected or moved off the team as quickly as possible. This can be a very, very negative type person to have within your team, and they can impact you in a negative way. The last one here is the lovable slacker. And this one's the hardest because in my own personal experience, I have kept lovable slackers on our team way too long. And the reason why that is because they have humility, they have people skills, they're easy to get along with, people love them, right? That's why they're lovable slackers. But and often other team members love them, patients tend to love them, right? But they lack the drive to contribute to the team's goal. These are people who consistently make the same mistakes. They do lack attention to detail frequently. They struggle with, just getting distracted with interests outside of the team, right? This may be somebody who's very passionate about, fantasy football or whatever, crocheting, whatever. But they're not as passionate about, they don't care as much about your practice and being excellent at what they do. And so this is somebody, again, you have to identify, are they a lovable slacker? Do they have, are they constantly making the same mistakes? Are they not learning from the mistakes they made in the past, or what? And so it can be a difficult person to let go, but it's usually somebody that you wish you would have let go, 6 months, a year earlier. So what you're looking for, Doc, is somebody that has the characteristics of an ideal team player, meaning they have the personality type that's going to fit well with you and the rest of your team members, and also these basic characteristics of an ideal team player. They are humble, they are hungry, and they are smart.